Morning, everybody. It's the old captain coming to you live from Crooked Creek. I'm down at the dock this morning, not in the canoe. I'm just kind of sitting here on the dock. I kind of situated the camera. I was hoping so you could see a little bit of the creek behind me and the bank where we've been working. But this morning's topic is not a popular topic. It's particularly among women. It's not a popular topic, but it deals with relationships. Peter, in our text, is 1 Peter 3, about the 7 verses. But over the last chapter or so, Peter's been talking about relationships, how Jesus submitted his will to the Father's will, how we are to be submissive to authority, police officers, our bosses, um, people over us in any shape or form, how we're to respect the office of the president and people, elected officials, and to a certain degree be subordinate or submissive to those people. That's just God's order. I mean, that's just the way He designed things. And today we're going to talk about a particular relationship that's very exclusive, and that's the relationship of marriage. And you thinking, oh boy, you're fixing to open up a can of worms here. Well, maybe so, maybe not. We'll see. But there are some men who every time they see something in the Bible about their wives being submissive, they say, man, they underline it, they highlight it. You're supposed to submit, you're supposed to submit, you're supposed to submit, do what I say, blah blah blah. Well, that's really not the intent. That's really not what it's all about. Um, it seems that there were three men one day talking about how they had, quote, trained their wives, and how submissive their wives were to them. One fellow said, shoot, when I say jump, boom, she jumps. When I say hop, she hops. Another guy says this and that. And the third guy, he was kind of quiet. He was kind of shy. And they said, well, what's going on with you? And he said, my wife yesterday crawled to me on her hands and knees. And they said, what? He said, that's right. She came crawling to me on her hands and knees. And they said, how'd that go? What was up with that? He said, well, she said, get out from under that bed and fight like a man. So that was just kind of a little bit of humor, a little bit of an intro. But we're going to be looking primarily in the first 7 verses of 1 Peter 3. And folks, this was written long before Helen Reddy sang I Am Woman and Hear Me Roar. And this has nothing to do with the workplace where a woman feels subordinate to a man. It has no bearing on men have the authority to tell all women what to do. It's nothing like that. This is between a husband and a wife. A husband and a wife. Period. That's it. That's all it's about. All right, chapter 3, verse 1. Likewise, wives, be submissive to your husband, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your conduct accompanied by fear. So, in this particular setting, in biblical times, early on, women had no authority, no power, no anything like that. If the man wanted to worship such and such, she would follow suit. If he wanted to move here, she would follow suit. That was just the nature of the culture of those times. Well, as Christianity developed, there were women who were accepting Jesus and becoming Christians, and here they were married to a pagan man. and they wanted him to become a Christian as well. Well, it was one thing for the man to influence a woman. It was a whole nother ballgame for the woman to try to be an influence on the man. That was just unheard of. Well, Peter says you're to submit to the position of your husband, and by your actions, by your tone, by your life, perhaps he will be drawn to the Lord as well, just as you have been. Um, it's been my observation that you cannot badger your husband into going to church. You cannot badger your husband into becoming a Christian. That's just not going to work. Time after time, you see women at church and their husbands are either fishing or playing golf or at home, and you're not going to win them over by nagging them. I heard about a lady who she was so adamant about her husband becoming a believer that she went into his truck and turned the radio station onto a Christian station and superglued it. Then she fixed the TV so every time it came on, it was an evangelical message. Well, I just don't think that's going to do the job, and I don't think that's what the intent was here. Let me read it again. He says, even if some do not obey the word, talking about the husbands not obeying the word of God, without a word, they may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your conduct accompanied by fear or respect. So he's saying, live it out. And so in doing so, perhaps he'll be drawn to who you believe, be drawn to the Lord, be drawn to Jesus. Well, you say, well, that's all well and good, but what's a husband supposed to do? Well, in verse 7, it says, husbands, dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. We're to honor our wives. I don't know if you've noticed, but other than the obvious physical differences, men and women are different. Somebody has said that men are more occupational and women are more relationship based. Let me give you an example, and I can clearly show you. I came out here several weeks ago and I cleaned this bank off, and I've raked and I've blown leaves and I've strung lights, and I've, with the help of a friend, put together that fire pit out there. And I wanted Ramona to come and acknowledge what I had done. All I wanted was an attaboy. I mean, I want her to come down here and say, my, you have worked hard, and I see the little boo-boo on your finger where you pinched it between two blocks, and I'm so sorry, but you have done a great job, and I know you're proud, and I'm proud of you. That's all I wanted. Well, 2 weeks later, she finally comes down, and she looks, and she says, man, this looks nice. You've worked hard. You've cleaned all this off. The fire pit looks so good. I know you're proud. Well, folks, I was good. That's all I wanted was some acknowledgement. Well, do you think when Ramona organizes her closet or when she cleans up her desk that she's going to come in there and get me and say, Horace, come look at my closet. Come look at my desk. I mean, they're not wired that way. They're not wired that way. It says, husbands, honor your wife, revere your wife, love your wife, take care of your wife, put her up on a pedestal and just tell her she's the most beautiful thing in the world. Folks, I have heard that beauty is only skin deep, but ugly is to the bone. ugly to the bone. Now, we want our wives to be attractive. We want them to be beautiful. We want them to look nice in public and all that. But far more important than that, and that is important, but far more important is what they are on the inside. Far more important is the same thing applies to us. What are we on the inside? There's a world of difference between dominance and leadership. I've been married almost 52 years and I've never dominated anything. Hopefully, I have led to the best of my ability. But you have to earn that leadership. It doesn't just happen. But women are directed to seek. Both parties can't lead. It just doesn't work. You can't have two leaders. And God is, in His sovereignty, has designated the man as the leader. So you can argue, you can say you're crazy, you're living in the dark ages and whatnot. I'm just telling you what Peter wrote in chapter 3, verse 1 through 7. No one loves her wife any more than I do. No one respects and believes that they've got the best wife in the world any more than I do. But when it comes down to it, I am called to be the leader of our home. Well, I'll just throw that out there and let the chips fall where they may. I'm anxious to hear what you think. But anyway, I tried to think of a hymn, about relationships, about, this and that and the other. And there's several titles, but the only one I can think of that I was even vaguely familiar with and hopefully applicable is "Blessed Be the Tie That Binds." It says, "Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love. The fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above." So that's what we're going to sing this morning. It's going to be our hymn of the week, "Blessed Be the Tie." And it's the writer was John Fawcett, Fawcett, like Farah. And then music was by Johann Nageli, arranged by Lowell Mason. And this was all in the late 1700s, late 1700s, to the late 1800s. 4 verses, "Blessed be the tie that binds." Most of us are very familiar with the first verse, not so much with the other 3. Get a little sip of the old captain's coffee, then we'll sing. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Before our Father's throne we pour our ardent prayers. Our tears, our hopes, our aims are one, our comforts and our cares. We share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows the sympathizing tear. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. Someone has suggested that occasionally we marry the wrong person. And you might be thinking, whew, boy, I'll tell you what, I married the wrong person the first time, the second time, the third time, and the fourth time. I never hit it. I didn't have any shelf life. I don't know what happened. But It's been suggested that sometimes if you feel like you've married the wrong person, if you treat them in a godly manner, if you respect them, if you adore them, if you love them, if you are totally unselfish toward them, you may find out that that wrong person was the right person after all. I hope this helps. I hope you don't think I'm crazy, but if you do, you're not the first one. But I do thank you for stopping by for this week's Crooked Creek Hymn of the Week. You take care and God bless.